Hey guys, welcome back. Today I want to talk about sharpshooting with an AR-15. Okay, now I say sharpshooting. I'm not talking about sniping. A lot of times people use the word sniping very loosely. Sniping involves a lot of other skills, primarily hiding, moving discreetly. So that's usually not what we're doing. What we're usually doing is we're basically doing distance shooting with an AR-15. So that's why I'll refer to that as sharpshooting. Okay. So basically, one of the things to be aware of is that this is a video about sharpshooting with an AR-15, which the results of which are going to be different than if you're doing sharpshooting with a bolt-action rifle. Okay, so you gotta have to compare apples to apples here. An AR-15 is probably not going to shoot as well as most precision bolt-action rifles. Okay, this is a combat rifle. Okay, and basically, by putting a scope on it, basically we're trying to use it more effectively for distance shooting. But it's still a combat rifle. It's not, it's not a dedicated precision rifle for shooting at great distance. Okay. Now this particular rifle is a Ruger MPR, multi-purpose rifle. And what I have on it, I have a variable scope, a 1-to-8 power. Okay, and basically, for distance shooting, even though I've done distance shooting with red dots, I mean, the max distance that you can pretty much shoot with a red dot is about 100 yards. With the variable scopes, we can push that out a little bit more. Okay, so I like the 1-to-some power. The reason is because when you bring it down to a 1 power, you can basically still use this, as you would a regular AR-15 with a red dot. It's not as good, but it will, it's pretty good. Okay, and of course, by rotating this up to the 8 power, now we can shoot greater distances. Okay, this particular scope is the primary arms 1-to-8. It's a pretty economic scope between the scope and the mount. I think I paid $400 for this. So it's pretty good if you're shooting out to about 200 yards, 300 yards. Any further than that, I mean, yeah, you could do it, but you may want to use a better scope. But it's definitely a very good scope. Okay, this rifle does have an 18-inch barrel, and it does have a 2-stage trigger, which means basically there's about a 1-pound take up, and then after that it's got a 4-pound trigger, which is a little bit lighter than your standard mil spec AR. And one of let's take a step back and let's talk about what we can expect from a standard mil spec AR. From your standard Smith & Wesson, the MP-15, or your Ruger, the 5.56, or the just a Colt. Basically our goal here, with the 16-inch barrel that they typically come with, and the 7 to 8 pound trigger, our goal is basically to get to a 2-inch group. Okay, now initially you may not be getting near that. You may start with a 6-inch group, or 5-inch group, or 4-inch group, or you may eventually be able to do a little bit better than 2 inches. You might be able to do that with this particular rifle here. The best grouping I've gotten at 110 yards, I've gotten an 1.5 inches. Okay, that's my best grouping. And I'll typically get an 1 3/4 at 110 yards. So at 100 yards, basically it's well within that 2-inch. But again, I have an 18-inch barrel and I have a lighter trigger pull. And it's really not that significant of a difference. So our goal, is to try and get you guys down to 2 inches, and basically work from there. If you're using a red dot instead of a magnification scope, you're probably looking to come in at about 3 inches. That's usually, you might start, obviously you'll start off a lot worse than that, but eventually you'll be able to bring it into about 3 inches. That's typically what I'll get with red dots at 100. I get at 110 yards with a red dot. But with a variable scope, you should be able to get it down to about 2 inches and maybe a little bit better. But we want to be realistic. We're not comparing this to a bolt-action rifle. You'll have guys with bolt-action rifles and really high-end barrels and the super light triggers, and they'll be like, yeah, I'm getting 1/4 inch groupings and stuff like that. But those are completely different rifles, different platforms. This is a combat rifle, okay? So if you can get that 2-inch grouping, that's a good place to be. Okay, that's at 100 yards. Now let's talk about some of the other things I got on this rifle. Basically, I like to use a 20-round magazine. The reason is because I find that the 30-round magazines, they're a little bit longer, and they'll usually hit the table, which means I would have to build up the platform that I have here a little bit more. So for the most part, it's easier for me just to use a 20-round magazine. Okay, even though you can work around that. Okay, so that kind of makes my life a little bit easier. Let's talk about our shooting technique. Okay, so basically you sit down, get the front of the gun steadied. Okay, get that in the ballpark of where you want it to be. And now basically in the back here, what I have is a sand sock. Basically this is a sock, it's a white sock that I have filled with play sand. And what that does is, basically what I'm doing is I'm putting that sock on the back of the, on the back of the stock here, and basically with my left hand, basically I pull the rifle into my chest, face on the stock, okay? Obviously this hand's on the grip with a straight finger, and basically I'm basically squeezing that sock in the back to get the elevation that I want and to steady the gun. I'm using my face to steady the gun, both eyes open, okay, and get the reticle on target, okay? This elbow here basically points in the direction of the target, okay? And basically what that does, it keeps everything tighter, pushes my hand into the sock, okay? All right. So what we want to do is once we get on target, get into that position, okay, and get your reticle. And this particular scope has a chevron. It looks like a little arrow. I'm going to get my chevron right under my target, okay. And then what you want to do is close your eyes and then open it. All right, close it, open it. And the purpose of that is that when you open your eyes, you want your reticle to be right where you started off. If it has moved, it means that you're not comfortable. So you're going to have to readjust yourself. Okay, so that's one of the, because you don't want to be struggling to keep yourself in that position. Okay, you want everything to, you want to be comfortable in that position. And that's one of the ways that I test that I'm comfortable in that position. I'll close my eyes and then open them, okay? So once you get yourself in that position, okay, oh, by the way, before I skip ahead, let's say if you're laying on the ground prone, what you want to do is open up your legs and keep your ankles flat on the ground, not on your toes. Because if you're on your toes, you'll tend to bounce them. That's why you want them flat on the ground. Okay. Everything else is more or less the same, as what I just said. All right. So going back to we got our reticle on the target. What we want to do is we want to hold our breath. Okay. So take a deep breath. Okay. Or exhale. That'll work fine. Okay. Because what that's going to do is going to either let the air, either take in air or let out air. But what you want to do is you want to stop breathing. And the reason why you want to stop breathing is because every time you breathe, your ribs rotate and you move your body, okay? So by stopping your breathing, okay, what that's going to do is that will make you more steady, okay? Now, one of the things that you'll notice if you're shooting at distance with a magnification scope is that there will still be some movement. With the chevron on the scope, there'll still be a little bit, up, it'll be pop, bop, bop. And what that is, that's basically your heartbeat, or my heartbeat when I'm doing this, okay? Your heartbeat will move the gun as well. And what I try and do is I try to time my shot between my heartbeats, okay? So that's one of the things you want to be aware of. You're not going to be able to hear your heartbeat, but you can see it. You'll see it, your reticle, as it continues to move a little bit. It's really a tiny difference, but if you can time that shot, you'll be that much more accurate, okay? The other thing now is your trigger squeeze, all right? You want the soft part of your finger on the trigger, okay? And you want to dry fire a bunch of times, okay? So that when you pull the trigger, basically the gun doesn't move, okay? And then when you go to live fire, okay, what you want is after the gun goes bang, okay, you want your reticle to end up exactly, pretty much where it started off. If you see your reticle jumping to the right or jumping to the left, basically what you want to do is you want to adjust that with your trigger squeeze. So if it's jumping to the right, as you squeeze it, try and push a little bit towards the left, or if it's pushing, or if it's jumping to the right when you shoot, in the other direction, basically compensate for that. Okay, that's something to pay attention to when you're shooting. Keep your eye on the reticle, keep it, on your target, and through each shot, make sure that it's not jumping left or right. If anything, it should just go straight up and come straight back down on your target, on whatever you had your reticle on, and that's pretty much the perfect shot. Okay, so that's how you want to squeeze the trigger, and basically it'll take usually I'll do a 10 round grouping, and it does sometimes it does take a little bit of practice to get that trigger squeeze right, so you're not pulling left or right, and it takes a good deal of concentration to be consistent with your trigger squeeze every single time when you're trying to work at that level. Okay, but that's what's going to get you to that to that 2-inch grouping that we're trying to get to. Okay, other things to consider is the wind. Okay, the wind will affect your your bullets. And basically, I have a whole bunch of ribbons that I have downrange over here. I basically just take these, I tie these to trees. Okay, so let's talk about what we got here. Okay, that's 0. If you tie a ribbon to a tree and you see this, if you see it hanging straight down, put a little closer so you can hear me. Okay, that's 0 wind. Okay, that's a 20 mile per hour wind. Okay, so if you remember those two numbers, the rest is easy. So that's 20 miles per hour. A 20 mile per hour wind will move your bullet about 2 inches. Okay, if it's coming in, straight across, or hitting it straight on the side. Okay, so this is a 20 mile per hour wind that will move your bullet 2 inches in that direction. Okay, so let's start from the bottom. 0 wind, 5 miles per hour, 10 miles per hour, 15 miles per hour, 20 miles per hour. Okay, so I find it just easier to remember the 20 miles per hour, and then basically you just divide by 4. And you'll know, 5, 10, 15, and 20, okay? And basically the 5 mile per hour wind will move your bullet about a ½ inch in that direction. 10 miles will move it about 1 inch. The 15 mile per hour wind will move it 1.5 inches. And the 20 mile per hour wind will move it up to 2 inches. Okay. Now, in order for that to be fully effective, if this is your bullet going out, the wind has to be coming in, sideways to it. Okay. If the wind is coming in, let's say at a 45-degree angle, all right, so if the bullet's going out here, basically that's going to impact it. So let's say a 20 mile per hour wind is going to basically shift it 2 inches to the right in this case. If it's coming in at a 45-degree angle, basically you cut that effect in half, okay? So whereas the bullet's going straight out and a 20 mile per hour wind is coming in, okay, if it's coming in at 45 degrees, instead of moving it 2 inches to the right, it's going to move it 1 inch to the right, okay? If the wind is coming straight ahead, okay, what that's going to do is it's going to slow down your bullet. So you can expect your bullets to hit a little bit lower. If your wind is coming from behind, you can expect they'll speed up your bullets a little bit, so they'll hit a little higher. Okay. So now, when I'm shooting, especially at 100 yards, I really don't try and predict what my bullets are going to do, because again, we're only talking about a 2-inch grouping at 100 yards. But I do use that as an explanation to kind of figure out what's going on. So basically, on a nice day, like I said, I'm expecting to hit about 2-inch groupings. If I'm having a day where it's like all of a sudden I'm getting 3 and 4-inch groupings, one of the things I will do is I'll look at my ribbons, and if I see the ribbons are blowing all over the place, then I know, yeah, the wind is what's pushing me around. If I see that the ribbons aren't moving, then I know that there's some other issue, maybe my fingers being inconsistent, or the ammunition's not being consistent, or so forth. As far as me being consistent or not consistent, by paying attention to what I said earlier about making sure your reticle is on your target, after the gun goes bang, that will go a long way. That's the feedback I need as far as me knowing how consistent I am. Okay, that gives me all the information I need to know on that. Okay, so that basically, so that eliminates me out of the equation. The ribbons eliminate the wind out of the equation. So then the only other issue that I need to consider is the ammunition itself. Okay, and some ammunition, is more consistent than others. And there's a lot of factors that go into making the ammunition and how consistent it is. Usually I find that if you shoot 10 rounds, with most target ammunition, out of 10 rounds, 2 rounds will probably be a little bit off. So usually I'll see a really tight grouping, and then I'll see 2 rounds that are like way off somewhere. That usually tells me that that's really an ammunition problem, unless I'm aware that I jerked the gun. And again, that's why I pay attention to my reticle when I'm shooting. I don't want that reticle moving, and if it does, I know I'm the issue there. I think I said everything I have to say on this. Basically, post some comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. We'll talk next time.